Hey sweet friends, welcome to a new tutorial video. In this video, I'm going to be talking about how I decorated a design in this Fortnite set. Now, I will be talking about all of the other designs at a later date, but today we are just going to focus on the game controller cookie. So without further ado, let's get decorating. Welcome to Rock City Cookies, where we talk about all things cookies. If you're new to the channel, hit that subscribe button and click the bell icon to be notified when we upload a new video. Thanks for watching. Now to start off, I will let you know that this cookie cutter is one that is listed in our Etsy shop. I will have it linked in the description box below, but it is the game controller cookie cutter. However, there are lots of different kinds of game controller cookie cutters, and you are more than welcome to use whichever kind that you would like. But to start, we are going to outline and flood the bottom section of this game controller cookie. And I am using a black icing, and black is a very difficult icing to achieve. Now, I personally prefer to use Americolor's Super Black. And trust me, I have used several blacks and I have found that their black seems to be the best if you're looking for just a gel black. And the reason for this is they have a higher concentration of coloring in their gel than some of the other brands. For instance, I used to use Hobby Lobby's Sunny Side Up Black, and I think it was named the same thing. I think it was named Super Black. And it would take so much gel to achieve black that I would pretty much go through an entire container of gel just to get one bag of black icing. And then also it alters the taste, but it also alters the texture. It alters a lot of things in your royal icing if you're using that much gel color to achieve the color that you need. So I never liked their black all that well. Now I use Hobby Lobby's colors for pretty much all of my other colors, but just for black, I really do prefer the Americolor. And the reason is because I can use just a few drops and I can get black so much easier than I could with Hobby Lobby's. So I highly recommend, if you don't have a black that you love, that you try out Americolors. I will link it in the description box below. You can purchase it on Amazon or you can purchase it on their own website. But I got the really large bottle of black icing and it's lasted for a really long time. So that's my 2 cents. I highly recommend. You're going to flood the whole bottom of the cookie and then you're going to let that dry for a little while before you come back and you flood the little button controllers at the top of the game controller. So I'm going to outline those, and then to help prevent any cratering, I'm going to actually use some thick icing in addition on the cookie itself as kind of a base to help stabilize that icing so that it's not pulling out too much moisture from the cookie and so that you're not having that cratering, that divoting happening. And so I'm going to do a thick outline, and then I'm going to scribble some icing, and then I'm going to come back with my flood and put icing over that, and then I'm going to cross my fingers and my toes. I'm going to put this right under the fan right away so that it's immediately starting to crisp over, and just pray that there is no cratering that happens. Because truth be told, you can do all the right things and you can still have cratering happen. But I got lucky and I was able to have great icing results by doing that this time. So I'm going to let the top, those little controllers, those little buttons at the top of the controller, I'm going to let those dry, and then I'm going to come back and do the details on top. Now, one thing I do want to mention, when I'm doing the outlining and the flooding on the bottom of my cookie, I get asked a lot, do you flood right away? Yes, I outline and then I flood the cookie right away. And it is 2 different consistencies. I use a thick consistency for outlining, and then I use a flood consistency for the rest. And I do not use a thin flood. Make sure your icing is on the thicker side for your flood so that you don't have any issues with icing running over, that you don't have any color bleed issues because your icing's too thin. Definitely try to get your icing on the thicker side. You still want it to smooth out, but you don't want it to be so thin that as soon as you pipe it, it immediately runs together. Okay, that being said, let's work on these details. So I am going to outline, and then I'm going to use that same icing that I used to flood my cookies. I am going to use it on the top. This is also why your icing doesn't need to be too thin, because if you're going to use it later for detail work on top of your cookie, if it's too thin, you absolutely will have cratering. But if your icing is a little bit more on the medium side of things, you're able to use it later later and you're not having to have multiple bags of icing. You can have 2 bags. You can have a thick icing and a thin icing, and that will accomplish all of the work that you need to do for your decorating. Now I'm going to do the little buttons on the bottom first, and I am projecting this clip art image that we used to actually create the cookie cutter. We are using it in addition on top of the cookie so that you're able to see where the buttons go. Now, if you don't have a projector, you can just look at the image and kind of see where they need to be placed on top of your cookie. But I love a projector because it allows for consistency between cookies, and it also kind of takes away the guesswork for me. It makes life easier if I can just get all of these controller cookies done at one time by projecting the image once and outlining it, and I can get all of that done like in a little assembly line at one time. It saves me time, and it also allows just for more beautiful pictures, a more beautiful result for your client, and just that consistency that makes all of the difference in the world. So I'm going to do as much as I can with my projector on right now. So I'm doing the raised areas that I'm doing with a black background that I actually will come back later and add additional buttons onto. But because I can't do that part right now, I'm still going to work on other areas that I can do while the black part is drying. So I'm going to do the little white buttons in the middle of the controller. I'm going to add a little bit more details on top of the buttons on top of the controller. And then I'm going to let all of that dry for a little while. Now, the good part about the areas on top of a cookie versus like when you're just flooding a cookie is that it doesn't take near as long for those areas to dry as it does like your base, like your flood. So I usually let my flood dry for a couple hours before I pick back up the cookie, but this kind of detail areas where I'm just going to be flooding on top, I really only have to let that dry for about 30 or 45 minutes underneath a fan. I have fans blowing on my cookies at all times. And that way I'm able to come back and now I'm able to add the button details on top of the controller as well. So I'm using a thick white icing, the same icing that I used on the little middle portion, the little middle buttons. And I'm going to carefully, with my projector, with the image projected on, I'm going to carefully outline and get all of those placed in exactly the right spots that I want them to. And then I'm going to ice my cookie at that point in time. Now, with your scribe tool, you might need to smooth out some of those areas since this is a thicker icing, but just make sure that you're not puncturing through. So be very careful with that scribe tool to kind of keep your scribe tool, the pointy part, on top where the icing is and not actually puncture down into like the black area that you've already piped and that's still drying. It's going to be still a little bit soft. I'm going to do both sections of the little buttons so they look differently on the controllers. So I'm going to copy that graphic and I'm going to do it the way that the graphic projected it onto my cookie. And I'm going to do my little joysticks, which are at the bottom of the controller. So by imitating those, I'm just going to do another black dot and I'm going to smooth that out. Now this time I am using my thick icing. If you used thin icing here, it wouldn't keep its shape. So all of these details have to be done with thick icing if you want precision, if you want it to keep its shape. But because it's thicker, it may take me a little bit longer to use my scribe tool to kind of shake that icing and jiggle that icing so that it does smooth out. And then I'm going to add the birthday boy's name onto the controller. Now this is completely optional. You do not have to have this part. However, when it's a customized cookie set, I really like to add the child's name onto the cookie as often as I can, or the child's birthday number, or something along those lines that makes the cookies feel custom, because that is the whole perk of doing a custom order, is that the client and their customer, they feel like their cookies are custom to them. It looks great in their pictures. It's a memory for them. When they look at those pictures of those cookies, they know exactly what child it is and how old they are. And it's just a good memory keepsake for them. But also it helps them to feel like they're getting their bang for their buck. So they are getting what they're paying for, because custom cookies aren't exactly cheap. They are a luxury item. And because they are a luxury item, people pay more for them, which means they expect more from them than they would a grocery store item. So that is why I decided to add the birthday boy's name to the game controller. And again, this is completely optional. I do recommend that if you are going to add the child's name, I would make sure it's in capital letters, just so that you don't have to worry about any letters going down below and into the controller. It's kind of contained in that top portion of the controller. And that's it. Our little game controller cookie is done. It's really not that complicated. Yes, we had to do it in multiple steps. You are going to have to allow this cookie to dry over multiple times as you're working. But in the end, all of that extra details really makes the design pop. And that's it, sweet friends. We are done with the game controller cookie. I will be back in later videos to show you some of the other designs in this set. So until then, I'll see you soon. Bye-bye.